there's a lot of young men and women, say the average 20-year-old or even 25-year-old, they find the whole idea of having children, bringing new life into the world, very scary because they feel like, hey, I don't have the money, I can't afford it, I can't even buy a house, I'm in debt, I'm struggling to keep my head above water, so on. So what do you think could practically be done in USA, Canada, UK, Europe, all these developed countries, South Korea, Japan, all these places where the, population is declining, birth rates are declining? I think it's one thing to recognize the issue, but what do you think can be done on a sort of practical, reasonable level?
Well, I do think that like some of the incentive structure in a lot of countries is against having kids.
Yes.
Like it is expensive to have kids, especially if you want to sort of give them the best education and all that sort of stuff. So it's it is financially difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I say that, but then ironically, the higher someone's income,
fewer kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't totally make sense that you have an inverse correlation with income and kids. So I guess people may sort of think that, but it's not actually real. I think that the fears, there's these unjustified fears of like, well, if I have a kid, things are going to be financially terrible, and it's actually not true. It's just, I don't know that I have a good answer to this because I'm trying to figure it out.
I know that for a lot of young people, and some of this is media and cultural programming, but a lot of people have been pushed over the decades the idea that having children ruins your life. Right? That it takes away your freedom and your autonomy, and you can't have fun and do all this cool stuff, and you've got to just, I think the idea of parenthood, I think the solution is, I don't know exactly how to do this, but I think the idea of parenthood and family needs to be made cool.
Yeah, it does.
It needs to be made cool again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people just don't understand, like, nothing will make you happier than having kids. It will absolutely improve your happiness level to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we're kind of like programmed for that. It's like, if we just say like in the old days where it's like, people were sort of like food was like short supply, you had plague, it's like trying to survive from one year to the next in the old days was like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, now we have, now that's kind of more or less normal that you would survive from one year to the next. So, we've become, I guess, complacent, but basically, if it wasn't rewarding instinctively to have kids, we wouldn't have them.
Yes.
Almost none of the world was literate until not that long ago. So it's not like you'd like, oh, let me read a bunch of books. You kind of have to instinctively love having kids. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't read about it. And it's like, it's just don't read books.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to understand. You will absolutely be happier if you have kids. Absolutely. We're literally, we've evolved to have that, as all creatures have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can take, say, like, I don't know, like an alley cat or something, or a bobcat, like some like wild creature that would normally be quite fierce and unfriendly,
mm-hmm.
And like kill or eat anything it came across. But the moment it has, cubs or puppies or whatever, or kittens, it becomes that becomes loving mom.
Mm-hmm.
So like the cat that was really mean is like taking care of its little kittens. It's instinct. It's like, it's genetic programming. So people should really expect that if they have kids, they will improve their quality of life, not make it worse.
In what ways? We know you've got a lot of kids.
Yeah, I'm trying to set a good example.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How has having kids made your life better? How does it make you happier? And how does it motivate and drive the things that you're doing?
Well, I don't know. It's like, I think it's normal to love your kids. It's just kind of an automatic thing. And they've got this little creature that's depending on you to take care of it. And it's very rewarding to do so, I think, inherently. They're a lot of fun. But I don't know, you love them, they love you. It's great.
Do you find being a father is a driver? Is that a particular driver and motivator for the way you think and the things that you're not trying to do, the things you are doing?
I think it does motivate me to, want to make sure that the future is going to be good for my kids, and sometimes people might say like, well, so sometimes I'm complimented and they'll say like, well, it's very magnanimous of you or altruistic of you to care about civilization. But I think actually, like, even if somebody's very selfish, you should still care about civilization, because we cannot live in the absence of civilization. Mm-hmm. You cannot live alone. We cannot, if you want to know what being alone and without civilization is, just look at like Naked and Afraid. It's not, they don't want to. It's not. We all like actually hanging out with other humans. We all actually like each other more than we think. In reality, one of my sons, Saxon, who's sort of autistic, but he's kind of awesome. He's like an oracle of wisdom. He for a long time he was very. I'd try to have like a family dinner at a restaurant once a week. Just go out somewhere, and Saxon for a long time was really didn't understand why we were doing this. He's like, why are we going out? And then finally he had an epiphany and said, oh, the reason people go to restaurants is to hang out with strangers. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually true. Yeah. Because you can get the same restaurant food delivered. You can call your friends over. Yeah. But you know what you can't get unless you go to a restaurant is hanging out with strangers. So we actually like hanging out with strangers.
Wait until he discovers nightclubs.
Yeah, exactly. Like nightclubs. You go to a nightclub, you're like,
a dark room with loud music.
You can barely see anyone. It's music's loud, but it's still kind of fun. And you're just with a bunch of strangers, basically. Humans actually do love other humans more than they may think they do. And you look at, like, say, what's like one of the worst punishments in prison is solitary confinement. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, if you're not in solitary confinement, the rest of the prisoners maybe not like the most awesome group to hang out with, but it's way better than being alone.
Yeah, you're probably safer in there, but
yeah,
you don't want to be there.
So humans love other humans more than they realize.
Yeah,
yeah.
You say your son's name is Zaxxon. Is that named
Zaxxon,
after a video game?
No, it's actually no.
No, I was thinking. I was like, wasn't there an Atari game?
No, it's just.
No, okay.
Sounded cool. So.
Oh, okay, fair enough. That was nice. I know that I want to rewind back a little bit, because I feel like I've listened to a lot of your interviews, and a lot of stuff is about the sort of here and now. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about your journey. People see all the things that you're doing now with Tesla and putting rockets in space and buying Twitter and, restoring free speech, trying to make humanity an interplanetary species. But tell me more. I went to South Africa for the first time just a few months ago. So I went to Johannesburg. I went to Cape Town. I know that's where you grew up and you spent your childhood.
Mostly in Johannesburg and Pretoria, and for a couple of years in Durban. Okay. I visited Cape Town a few times, but didn't live there.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit more about the pre-super multiple CEO, Elon Musk, ultra.
I had kind of like I wouldn't say, I really mostly sad and unhappy childhood, actually. It wasn't 100% bad, but it was pretty rough. And I lived in South Africa until I was 17. And then I was able to get Canadian citizenship through my mom, because she was born in Canada.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, I left when I was 17. So, I think my views of South Africa are somewhat scarred by kind of a negative childhood experience, like literally scars.
Yeah.
I have literally quite a few scars. So it was tough. So there's certainly plenty of good things about the country, but my particular experience was not that great. So
I hear that.
yeah.
I know you. One of your first projects was a video game called Blastar.
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Tell us about Blastar.
Well, I always loved video games when I was a kid and computers. So the video games back then were extremely primitive, So I guess when I was about, 10 or so, I saw like the first computer. I mean, I read a lot of books, and then I saw that you could actually have a computer, I thought, wow, this is the best thing ever. It was a Commodore VIC-20. I think it had like 8K of RAM or something.
8K.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was best. I thought it was the best thing ever. And so I got a book on programming, taught myself how to write computer programs. And then gradually progressed from the Commodore VIC-20 to the Sinclair Spectrum, which was actually a pretty brilliant little computer. That was a 48K computer that felt very advanced after the VIC-20. And then so I was just kind of programming, and you couldn't really get very many games. So I was like, well, I'll program games, play them myself. But it is interesting that the simple game that I wrote when I was a kid, and I think I wrote it when I was like 11 or something. And I did all the graphics and the music and everything. So primitive graphics, primitive music, but still. I was actually, I sold the game for money, which wasn't that much money, but it was a lot for a little kid. And I wrote a bunch of other games too when I was a kid, and then actually I worked briefly at a software company, a games company called Rocket Science in Palo Alto, which had nothing to do with rockets. It was just a games company. And then I don't know. I wrote software for almost 20 years, from like age roughly 10 to 30.